When Blue Lock Season 2 was first announced for this year, I was honestly shocked. I expected them to capitalize on the 2026 World Cup and release the second season then, but for some reason 8-Bit Studio rushed for production on the most anticipated arc of the series. After watching the second episode, I am left speechless. It honestly felt like I was in a simulation because in my mind, I was like, this cannot be Blue Lock Season 2. I was watching PNG lock, PowerPoint lock, frames lock, whatever you want to call it. We just witnessed some of the worst animation this year, and it might even go down as one of the worst anime episodes of all time. I usually keep my reviews calm, collected and concise, but this time I'm speaking straight from the chest, so please forgive me if I'm not as coherent as usual. The first episode of this season had me cautiously optimistic. The art style was improved and the character designs were closer to the manga. The backgrounds looked good and some of the minimal movement we saw from Sai and Shido was pretty decent. A lot of people were praising the first episode, but I kept my expectations low because after watching that trailer, I knew the tide was gonna turn quick. One thing we know about Blue Lock from season 1 is that the first episode is always going to be good. But here's the thing, nobody watches Blue Lock for the characters to be standing around and talking. We want to see the characters play football and do some cool skills and score some insane goals. After this second episode, I'm starting to think that season 1 might have had better animation. And let's be honest, even though season 1 wasn't perfect, at least the first half of it was enjoyable despite its flaws. The production quality in season 1 suffered due to the hype of the World Cup as well as 8-Bit Studio rushing their animators. That's why the second half didn't look as good. But what is the excuse this time? Why would 8-Bit Studio waste resources on releasing episode Nagi as a movie? It could have been an OVA. Also, from what I've heard from people who've seen the movie, it was just a shameless cash grab. Nothing more, nothing less. I will be the judge of that myself. Those resources should have been allocated to this season, but it seems the production committee doesn't care about Blue Lock, which is a shame, especially considering it was the highest selling manga of 2023, beating out JJK and My Hero Academia. You would think that such an important arc would be handled with care, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. Now I know how Tower of God fans felt. The uproar surrounding Blue Lock Season 2 makes sense because this series, especially the manga, is a highly visual medium. The artwork is dynamic, the set pieces are thrilling, and fans expect the anime to capture that. While I don't expect perfection, there's a bare minimum that needs to be met for a good series. A solid story, a great cast of characters, good voice acting and OST, and decent animation. And unfortunately, Blue Lock falls short in the last department. I know some people are gonna see this video and call it complaining, and respectfully, you could mismove that. Every fan base wants a good adaptation for their favorite series. Listen, Blue Lock fans joke around a lot, but that doesn't take away from the frustration of seeing poor animation in such a beloved series. What makes this even harder to watch is seeing other fan bases thriving while Blue Lock suffers. This month alone, Bleach fans are eating well, Dandadan fans are eating well, My Hero Academia fans feasted for an entire season, Blue Box looks beautiful, and then we get this. I love Blue Lock, and it's just tragic seeing it look this way. That said, there were some highlights in the episode. The Chigri scene, while hampered by slideshow animation and jarring CGI at times, it did show moments of brilliance. The voice acting and OST, as usual, remain excellent as always. Korosu's first person dribbling scene was a nice touch. I thought that looked very good, but these small things just don't make up for the glaring issues, man. After watching the second episode, I noticed one major issue, and that was the overuse of special effects. The lighting, coloring and compositing are good, but it feels like the studio were using that to mask the bad animation. In certain scenes, the effects were overwhelming and kind of detracted from the match, in my opinion. With the under 20 arc on the horizon, I have a feeling that some of these issues will be amplified, which could be bad if they're not done right. Despite my disappointment with episode 2, episode 3 was less irritating to watch. Were there still slideshow images? Yes. Was the CGI jarring at times? Absolutely. But in terms of direction, this episode was an improvement. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It wasn't anything special, but for this season, it's at least something. Continuing with the Team A versus Team B match, Hisagi asserted himself by scoring the winning goal for his team. The build up to this moment had some strong elements like the voice acting and the visuals, which were great. However, the overall impact was underwhelming due to the lack of animation. There was such minimal movement that the emotional weight of Hisagi's goal just didn't land for me. The voice acting and the music carried this episode. The animators clearly struggled to adapt some of the best manga panels, especially with Shido's goal. Shido is a fan favorite character who is known for scoring some of the most ridiculous goals from any position in the penalty box, but in this episode he barely moved. Now I understand why they completely cut out the Shido versus Kunigami match. If you want to know more about that, check out my video here. Had that been the first season of the episode with this level of animation, the animators would have gotten flamed on social media. Cutting out Shido versus Kunigami for time makes sense, because this season is only 14 episodes. I do believe it was the wrong decision. Shido will have a huge role in the upcoming U20 match, and not showing his match against Kunigami in Rio really does a disservice to the viewers, because that would have been the setup for what would happen later on during the season. His playstyle is also completely different from Rin's, and the anime fails to show just how lethal he is as a striker. One of the deeper problems here is 8-Bit Studio itself. They're a relatively young studio, and their experience lies in mostly adapting light novels and visual novels, particularly in the harem and magical idol genres. Why Bandai and the executives thought they'd be a good fit for a sports anime like Blue Lock is beyond me. And frankly, I don't even consider Blue Lock as traditional sports anime. It's more of a battle shonen with football. Despite the improvements this season, 8-Bit just doesn't have the experience to handle this project faithfully. The fluidity of the dribbling, the running and the shooting that Blue Lock requires is what they're struggling to bring over from the manga. We don't need flashy colors, we need smooth animation. It's important to bring up the larger production issues that affect many seasonal anime. Typically, anime is produced on tight, compressed schedules with different teams working on multiple episodes simultaneously. When you look at long-form anime like One Piece, Dragon Ball and Naruto, these anime follow the continuous production cycle, which is less common now than it was before. That made the production process much more refined, unlike how it is today. This often leads to poor working conditions and rushed episodes, as we're seeing in Blue Lock. This isn't always a budget issue as well. It also comes down to timing and the organization and staffing within a studio. We've seen other studios pull off miracles with limited time. Case in point, the Sukuna vs Mahoraga fight on JJK Season 2 was notoriously rushed by Mappa Studio, to the point that they couldn't even air the finished episode. The episode that we got was nothing short of phenomenal, arguably the best episode in the series. Once we got to see the final version of the episode in the Blu-ray, it was a night and day difference. Comparing 8-Bit Studio to Mappa Ufotable is unfair, but the reality is, for a series as dynamic as Blue Lock, they need experienced staff who understands how to animate high action sequences. So with all of this being said, is Blue Lock Season 2 doomed? Honestly, I'm not sure, and that uncertainty is terrifying. There's a 50-50% chance, in my opinion, that they saved their budget for the under 20 arc, but I'm worried about the inconsistency we'll see throughout the season. There's a lot of huge moments in the under 20 arc, and it's scary to think that some of them may be poorly animated. I remember seeing a tweet a month ago warning people to keep their expectations low for the season, not just for the third selection matches, but for the entire season. Make of that as you will. My advice to every Blue Lock fan is to manage your expectations. Hopefully the under 20 arc will be better, but we'll just have to wait and see. In the end, I'm disappointed and concerned for the future of the Blue Lock anime. If this season ends up being a disaster, the last thing any Blue Lock fan would want to hear is that 8-Bit Studio are handling season 3. At that point, I may even drop the anime and just stick to the manga. Guys, let me know your thoughts. Do you think this season can be saved, or is it over? And I want to pose a question to all of you watching the video. Hypothetically, if 8-Bit Studio were to drop the series, which studio would you like to see take over? Let's keep it realistic, no Mappa or Ufotable picks. I want to see what you come up with and explain why. Thank you to everyone who watched the video. Check out my Blue Lock playlist for the first selection and under 20 match. Subscribe for more content like this, and until next week, stay blessed.